Welcome back to Tightwad Workshop. Today we'll be making a picnic bench from this highly detailed plan. It's in that wood pile somewhere, we just have to find it and cut it out. Let's start by cutting the boards for the tabletop and seats. Our longest stock boards are 5400mm long, so if we make the table parts 1800mm long, we should be able to get 3 tabletop or seat boards out of each one. Next we'll cut out the 4 legs. The legs need to have a 60-degree angle cut at each end. This angle is easy to mark if you've got a protractor or a 60-degree set square, but you can also mark a 60-degree angle just using a compass. Start by marking your centre point. Then mark a semicircle. It can be any diameter. Leave your compass at the same distance setting, then mark off segments of the curve from each end. If you've done this right, the middle segment should be exactly the same size as the other two. When we join the lines, each of these segments will now be exactly 60 degrees. So now that we've got a template, we can use it to set our sliding bevel to 60 degrees. Then we can mark that 60 degree cut. I'm aiming for a table height of 800mm, and that means I need to cut the legs 925mm long. The legs need to have both diagonal cuts facing in the same direction, so line up your bevel with the first cut, then slide it down to your distance mark. I found this nail halfway through one of the cuts, but luckily it didn't damage the saw. I checked the rest of the boards more carefully before I sawed them. Now we can cut the 2 top rails. I've decided to use 8 boards instead of 7 for the tabletop, so I need to cut these rails to 800mm long. These top rails also have 60 degree ends, but on these boards you need the angles to face in opposite directions. So flip your bevel over before you slide it along the board. Now we need to cut the 2 seat rails. These rails will carry the weight of up to 6 people, so to keep the edges strong, I'll just mark and cut a 45-degree bevel across half the board's width. The seat rails are then cut to 1400mm long in the usual way. It's easier to measure the bracing struts once the table's assembled, so I'll cut them to size later. To save my back, I'll be doing the assembly on top of these trestles. First I'll use some 80 grit sandpaper to clean up the sawn ends of all the boards. After sanding, I picked out the best 6 boards to make the seats. Rough edges on the boards like these can be hidden on the underside of the tabletop. Next I'll lay out the tabletop boards across the trestles. Now we can prepare the top rails. Start by marking a line down the centre of each one. Now use your tape measure to mark 100mm intervals along both boards. Next we'll use a ruler to make drilling marks 20mm inside each of those intervals. Now we can rest the rails on top of some scrap blocks ready for drilling. I'll put these extra boards on each side to help support the drill guide. You might remember this drill guide from the previous video. I'll set the depth stop for the rail's thickness before I drill the pilot holes. These screws are a little bit too short to give a good hold in the tabletop boards, so we'll drill a nice deep countersink for them, like this. I've already fitted a bigger bit into the drill, so I'll just reset the depth stop to suit the new depth. Then drill the holes. Let's fit the screw and see how that looks. As you can see, the deep countersink gives the screw better penetration of the lower board. I'm using this brace to drive the screws because my drill is currently attached to the drill guide. Now we can mark 200mm in from the edge of the tabletop boards and fit the top support rail. Attach those 2 outside boards first with a single screw in each one. Now arrange the other boards so that they're all equally spaced. Then we can put a single screw into each of the remaining boards. Attach the rail at the other end in the same way with 1 screw per board. This will allow the joints a little movement while we're assembling the table. I'm using a slightly different method here to mark the screw holes for the seat support rail. I'm leaving a 10mm gap between each seat board. I've also marked the screw holes 25mm in from each side. Use the same method as before to drill and countersink the holes in the seat rails. We want those seat rails to line up with the top support rails, so push the first seat board across like this and line up the rails with each other. Then use a single screw to hold them together. Use the same method at the other end, but make sure you keep the seat rail on the correct side of the top support rail. Now we can pull out the seat assembly a little bit to make room for the second seat board. Now that we've finished assembling the seats, let's check to see if the two sets of rails line up. That looks pretty close to me. It's been raining a lot lately, so I'm trying to get this table finished in between the showers. I want my tabletop to be 320mm above the seats, so I've cut these three alignment blocks to 440mm to help me. I'll start by marking the centres of the rails. Now I'll clamp one of the alignment blocks to the tabletop rail. This needs to be in the centre and square with the tabletop. Now I'll attach the second alignment block to the upper tabletop rail. Then we can clamp the seat support rails to the alignment block. Now I can use that third alignment block to make sure those rails are the same distance apart across their whole length. You can easily loosen the clamps if you need to make any adjustments. Now we can fit the first leg in position. It needs to touch the first seat board here, and its beveled end needs to line up with the tabletop like this. Now we can drill the first bolt hole. These bolts have a smooth round head, and this square section grabs the inside of the hole to stop them from turning when you tighten the nuts. It's a good idea to tap them into the hole with a hammer so the square part's seated. Now we can add a washer. These washers have been recycled from something that I dismantled a long time ago. Now we can add a nut and fit the other three bolts. Once all the bolts are fitted, we can tighten their nuts with a spanner. The upper legs are fitted in the same way, but you'll need another two clamps to hold them in place for drilling. I'm standing on my double saw stool here so that I can reach. Once all the legs are installed, we can drop the table back onto its feet. We haven't installed the diagonal braces yet, so the table's really wobbly. We'll need to flip the table over to install the braces. I've already cut one end of this brace to a 45-degree angle. To find the right length to cut the brace to, we need to hold it against the top of the seat rail and make a mark like this. Now pass it under the seat rail and make a second mark like this. We need to cut it to a length halfway between those two marks. Once the brace is cut to the right length, we can attach it with two screws at each end. I think that'll be solid enough. Now we can go back and put screws in all the empty holes. I'm drilling the countersink holes on the angled surfaces manually, like this. Narrow seat boards like these will flex when people sit on them. We can reduce this flexing by adding a brace board in the middle of the seat. Now we can flip the table back upright and give it the traditional fat guy load test. I painted my previous outdoor table to match our house colours, so please leave a comment if you have any colour suggestions for this one. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Tightwad Workshop is filmed in front of a live studio audience.